The Bitcoin Group, the American original. For over the last 10 seconds, the sharpest Satoshis, the best Bitcoins, the hardest cryptocurrency talk. We'd like to welcome our panelists, Victoria Jones from Satoshi's Page.
Hi there.
Ben Ark from LN Bits.
Buenos dias, here in sunny El Salvador for the Adopting Bitcoin conference. Nice to be back on the show.
And I'm Thomas Hunt from the World Crypto Network. Moving on to Issue 1. Issue 1, FTX used corporate funds to purchase employee homes. New filing shows. The FTX disaster continues to explode across the pages of crypto Twitter and the financial news. We've even seen an FTX Ponzi lawsuit that could set a new mark for endorser liability, with Tom Brady, David Ortiz, Naomi Osaka, Shohei Ohtani, and Steph Curry all being named as parties in the lawsuit. Meanwhile, Sam Bankman-Fried is shopping at the grocery store in the Bahamas and laughing it off like nothing happened. Fortune magazine is running profiles of Caroline, hardly even accusing her of anything, and the New York Times seems to have taken the day off. Victoria, what's going on now in the FTX disaster?
Well, there seems to be no end to the dysfunction going on with this company, unfortunately. I mean, you know, buying personal properties on the company balance sheet. I mean, you are, as a company, you are actually allowed to buy property for employees, but it still has to be done in a specific way. And it turns out that the auditor who's looking at the books is just aghast at, you know, the lack of accountability, the quality of the accounts. You know, it's just, the story just goes from bad to ridiculous, really. It's just shocking that it was even allowed to happen, and that they got so big with no one saying anything. And then, of course, with the celebrity endorsements, you know, someone's filed a class action lawsuit to go after the celebrities. Well, you know, it's probably about time someone called some of the other players to account in this whole mess. And certainly, you know, if the lawsuit's successful, it's certainly going to give the celebrities some pause for thought in the future. So again, going to be very, very interesting to see how that all plays out.
It is true, when they advertised Gatorade and they said you could be like Mike, nobody actually ended up being like Michael Jordan. So I don't know about the celebrity lawsuit part, but the accounting going on in chat rooms, major decisions being made by emoji. Should we send them $200,000? Smiley face. Should I send them $300,000? Smiley face with stars in his eyes. What's going on at this company? We also have Caroline, who's now linked by her father, Ellison, to Gary Gensler, the head of the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, the people who are supposed to be investigating this. And meanwhile, we have all of these celebrities lending their names to a Bahamanian exchange. Would anyone have invested their money if they said during the commercial, "This exchange is in the Bahamas"? You know why. Wink, wink. It's insane. It's hard to believe. And yet he was on the cover of every magazine. And as my friend Morgan said, even in the toilets in San Francisco, the public toilets in San Francisco had Sam Bankman-Fried's face on it. They even had him in the fortune cookies in 2 locations, Sacramento and Vegas, fortune cookies with FTX advertisements. Ben Ark, what do you think about the FTX collapse? Many people are also noting that Bitcoin only went down 10%.
Yeah, what a tool. It's another. I mean, it's the cult of the entrepreneur. They have this so-called genius kid, and maybe he's been right about something like Bitcoin, and then everyone pins their hopes on him that he's going to be a genius. And actually, he's just a kid and just makes bad decisions, and hasn't lived life yet. So spends all the funds. He thinks that because their ego becomes so bloated, they got so many sycophants around them, because they've got so many people telling them that they're amazing. They think that they're going to be able to, at some point, return those funds either by using those funds to, you know, lobby governments. They're more friendly to Bitcoins, which then will in turn benefit their business, and they might be able to restore those funds. on the issue of the houses, they bought houses. I mean, at least these are assets which can be liquidated, and then the debts can be returned to the debtors. Because you got to remember that these people, when they scam people, like it's people's savings. It's really quite very, very sad. You know, there'll be a whole load of people, hundreds, maybe thousands of people who've lost their entire life savings, or be able to send their kids to college, and it's all off the back of some, you know, just ego kid who's run a ride. And his friends, and they made a set of incredibly bad decisions. And there was a Twitter thread on, there's a Twitter DM thread. What's the name of the main guy again? I've forgotten his name because, what's his name?
Sam Bankman-Fried.
Sam Bankman-Fried, that's it. I mean, up until 2 weeks ago, I had no idea what FTX was. I really didn't. And suddenly I have to learn all about this thing and then all about this tool. And why it's so affecting the Bitcoin price so heavily. But yeah, Sam Bankman-Fried, yeah, he's just this is the problem when you don't have accountability. Oh yeah, I was going to say there was a DM message thread from Twitter, and it was a journalist who'd reached out to him on, I think, November the 13th, and it was an interesting. You can Google it, you can find it, and it was supposed to be off the record, but the journalist just thought he showed such little empathy and regret that he felt obliged to publish it, which I think is fair for the victims. But yeah, in it he was in the past, a few months ago, he was saying that some regulation in the crypto industry would be good, but in reality, in this thread, he was just saying that yeah, screw the regulators, we don't need them. And actually, in this case, this is an example of where a little bit of regulation might stop something like this, where they might have their books audited and they might realise that it's a complete and utter shambles. I mean, I think as well, like there's been some discourse among governments like the US that the Bitcoin and crypto industry is here to stay. So that they can't just get rid of it, which means that now they will have to seriously look at regulating it efficiently and properly. So things like this, which happened, won't happen again, and people won't lose their funds. You know, he's not living some cypherpunk dream. It's just it's a business, a real world business. You can still use Bitcoin in the way it's supposed to be used, anonymously and peer-to-peer. But for this sort, if people want to use Bitcoin and trade with it and stuff, then those trading platforms, they should be regulated by government, and people should be insulated from these problems which happen in unregulated markets.
Obviously, there was nothing in the white paper about not having a board of directors and using customer funds like your piggy bank to just pay off your girlfriend's bad investments. But that's what happened. And it happened in a crypto or a Bitcoin business. So we all must pay the price. But now you must predict the future against the Bitcoin predictor ball, the greatest predictor in all of Bitcoin history, better than all the triangles. Victoria, the price is already down 10%. Everyone knows about Sam Bankman-Fried and FTX, but there could be more contagion. Will the price be up or down next week?
I think it's pretty obvious there's going to be a lot more to unwind here. I think it'll be going down.
Ben Ark, higher or lower?
I kind of feel like there might be some plateauing and rebounding. And I would like to point out that the last time I was on the show, I said there was going to be a horrible crash and there was going to be blood in the streets, because we've been parallel for so long and they just didn't see any uplift momentum. And I just imagined that there would be some black swan, something which just had some bad news cycle, which could easily just break the price down. And it did. So as miserable as I am for all the people who lost funds, I also would like to say, I told you so, the price went down. But yeah, I think it's going to plateau and maybe even pop up a little bit.
Ben Ark says, I told you so. And now here it is, the Bitcoin predictor ball. Will the price be higher this time next week? Outlook, not so good. Outlook, not so good. So we're not going up anymore. The ball has spoken. Moving on to issue 2. Issue 2. As Twitter staff empties out, users fear for the platform. According to Reuters news service yesterday, Twitter fired the main engineers in charge of keeping the platform running. Yes, the engineers who keep the site online were let go. Then Elon Musk announced that he was locking the doors of the building and that no one could come inside. Since then, everyone's pretty much been waiting for the Twitter infrastructure to completely collapse. as it's likely to do this weekend with the start of the World Cup. Hooray for soccer. Hooray for Twitter. Sad for Elon Musk losing so much money for no reason. Ben Ark, what do you think about the Twitter disaster as it continues to spiral down?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's quite usual when somebody buys a business that they go in and they have like a reshuffle. And Elon Musk isn't scared of being brutal when it comes to his employees. So he's probably just getting rid of, I mean, no matter how much I dislike Elon Musk, I have to appreciate that he's good at hiring people because he's built a lot of very successful companies. And although people like, again, the culture of the entrepreneur, people want to give credit to Elon Musk, it's actually amazing engineers that he's hired. In fact, so a good example is when Tesla started accepting Bitcoin and they were using BTC Pay Server. And I think within I think it's about an afternoon, they found like a critical bug in BTC Pay Server and put a commit in. Like he's got some very good engineers, and I imagine he's just going to be using them and then getting rid of the old guard who may be on board with some of the changes he wants to make. So this is just the reality of someone buying a company. I don't think it's going to collapse on itself. If anything, I actually think probably it will get better. As much as I don't like the dude.
They're saying it's like a Tom Sawyer event with people on Twitter celebrating Twitter's funeral on Twitter. Are they too early, Victoria?
Yeah, well, Elon has always been a bit of an attention junkie, hasn't he? So it doesn't surprise me. I mean, when I watched your live stream yesterday, it's quite clear that he was kind of making light of the situation and posting pictures of Twitter's grave and him at his grave. So, you know, as much as everyone else was kind of bemoaning its downfall, he was kind of milking it as well, which kind of just goes to show how resilient he is. I mean, I agree with Ben. I think he's a smart business person, and as much as people like to throw trash at him, he does have a track record, unlike our newfound friend SBF. You know, I don't think disaster is as likely. I think it's also true that, you know, he had a clear vision for the company. He seemed to have a clear vision for the company when he took it over. And he also has a very different philosophy behind it. So there was always going to be blood in the streets, I think, in terms of people being unhappy and wanting to protest. I mean, I've been in companies before myself where I've seen exactly that kind of thing play out. But of course, you know, Twitter is like the local town center for the world, isn't it? So any little bit of gossip, it's easy to escalate out of proportion, and Elon's made light of it by joining in the fun as well. I don't think it's nearly as bad as Twitter's making out. I think it's just par for the course with these sorts of changes.
Well, previously, Twitter had the kind of uptime that it was practically an internet utility. People would go to Twitter to complain about other websites being down, or they would search first. They would say, hey, is Microsoft down? Is Google down? I'm going to go check on Twitter. So I do think it's unfortunate for Elon to be squandering such an advantage in the consumer mind about uptime. When people look to share their important news during the Iranian Revolution, during the Egypt problem, and so on and so forth, they went to Twitter, and Twitter was there. Certainly they had early problems with stability. They were built in kind of a slapdash startup style. They fixed that, they reformed it, but there's still issues, as many threads have discussed, about what if a server has a hard drive that fills up and then that server stops replicating? Things like this that you don't expect to happen can happen even with good software like Twitter. So I do hope that he fixes it. I do think he's going to lose a lot of the credibility of Twitter, which could affect the price of Twitter when he later has to sell for pennies on the dollar. Exit question: will Elon Musk fix Twitter? Yes or no, Ben Ark?
I mean, to fix it would mean getting rid of Twitter and replacing it with some free and open source thing based on Musk. So I don't think he's going to do that. So he's not going to fix it. He's just going to improve it. People use it for a bit until the free and open source wins. That's all it does.
Victoria Jones, do you agree? Will Elon struggle and not create a free and open source Twitter?
I think, as Ben says, you know, free and open source probably would use a different protocol. He's certainly going to change it. I don't think it will die. You know, it's a valuable service. You know, people enjoy using it. I'd be very surprised if he didn't find a way to make it work.
No one has ever made money running Twitter. Neither will Elon Musk. He'll sell it to Google for half or less than what he paid for it, and it will be much diminished. But maybe it'll come back. Who knows? Check out worldcryptonetwork.com. We've got 3,019 videos. You could watch them for 3 months, 13 days, and 23 hours straight. That's a long time. Moving on to issue 3. Grayscale's Bitcoin Trust hits record low 43% discount after the FTX crisis. Grayscale's in trouble, and so is Genesis. Genesis has paused client withdrawals for their lending arm, citing the FTX impact. They've stopped withdrawals for the Genesis Earn program, and this has led to concern about the entire digital currency group portfolio. As you can see up here, Genesis Trading down here, you can see Purse, some other ones. It's pretty amazing. Zcash, that didn't work out. DCG is all over Bitcoin, and now they might be in trouble from FTX contagion. Victoria, what do you think about DCG, Genesis, and the Grayscale discount?
Well, the Grayscale discount, basically the market's telling us that the price is going lower. I know the way in which that Grayscale is organized is not exactly the Bitcoin price, but it's certainly a reflection of sentiment, I think. I know they've got a lot of competition from other people who brought out ETFs last year. But even so, to be carrying a discount for that long, I mean, I'm not au fait with exactly the technical ways in which these funds work, but on the face of it, I would have thought that's not a good sign. In terms of, what was the other one? Genesis suspending, now that is quite worrying because they're like the biggest, are they the biggest company providing yield to the entire crypto industry, and the number of people they're connected to? I mean, it's almost the same chart as with different companies that SBF has. I mean, you know, this is literally like a nuclear bomb's gone off in the crypto industry, really. And it couldn't be at a worse time, because I think, you know, the Fed is clearly trying to get a handle on inflation and restore their reputation for managing money in the markets. And, you know, there's so many issues kind of converging on each other that is not good for Bitcoin in the short term. We all know how good the technology is and how well it will work going into the future, but you know, these are big issues. You know, this is when Mt. Gox collapsed, it was one single exchange. You know, the interconnectedness amongst the businesses in this industry is really quite scary, and I think this is definitely a watershed moment, which ultimately is healthy, but it's like sending a patient to get major surgery. It's not just, you know, it's not just putting a plaster on their arm and telling them their arm's going to get better. This is like, you know, you almost have to do life support to get it back on its knees when this is over. I think it's going to be it's already pretty dreadful, but I think it's going to be a while before we see the full ramifications.
It's like that old SNL episode. They're going to get out the barber, do some bloodletting, and introduce the leeches. Ben Ark, do you think there'll be a domino effect? Will the FTX collapse knock down all these other businesses?
I mean, again, they're going to be heavily impacted. Victoria's absolutely right. This is a watershed moment, and ultimately, it needs to happen because this is clearly a point of failure. These companies and the holding that much Bitcoin on their balance sheet. So yeah, it's a problem which needs to be addressed, and then, you know, let's hope there's more decentralized ways of performing some of these functions, and then also let's hope that in traditional non-decentralized corporate structures that they are regulated, and they will have to be now, because as I said before, it's governments are now aware that the Trojans within the financial system. And that they're aware that this industry is not going anywhere, and if it can have such a cataclysmic effect on traditional on-ramps such as Genesis and Grayscale, because these were being used by traditional investors, then yeah, it's really going to highlight that it's really time that there's more straightforward regulation and oversight, and that will ultimately be good for private businesses, because private businesses will know how they could operate in those different jurisdictions, and there'll be less ambiguity, and Yeah, so ultimately good and healthy. It is an anti-Gox type moment, but I think there's I think the markets have perhaps, I don't know, considering the amount of liquidity within Bitcoin, I think, and considering how low we are as well. So if this had happened in a bull cycle, there'll be a lot more funds on some of these sites, but it hasn't. So hopefully that'll mean that maybe the markets have overreacted, and maybe it won't be as bad as we think it's going to be. But yeah, it's got to happen. It's healthy, and it's just a shame it came up. Well, no, actually, maybe it's a good thing that it came when it did, because if it happened at the top of the bull cycle, it could have been really, really quite bad, and more people would have lost their money.
Exit question. Satoshi Nakamoto, after seeing the 2018 financial crisis, invented Bitcoin, gave fire to man, said, hold your own keys, hold your own wealth. Man, of course, made banks. Is man now rightly punished? Is this similar to religion? Does everything repeat? Are they just worshiping the golden calf because they couldn't wait for Noah to come down the hill with the 10 or 15 commandments? Can't we ever listen? Are we eternally doomed to have great inventions like Bitcoin, great inventions like the internet turned into centralized websites like Twitter and Facebook? Victoria?
You have some great analogies, Thomas. But no, I think it's the nature of humanity, really. It's about consequences, and unless people face the consequences sometimes of their bad actions, they wouldn't learn their lesson. Some people face the consequences and still don't learn their lesson. So yeah, I just think it's part of life's rich pattern, and it's not the first time this kind of thing has happened, and it won't be the last.
Ben Ark, on the 8th day, Satoshi said there should be a Sam Bankman-Fried named SBF, and he should be in charge of the largest exchange in the world, FTX, and they should advertise on the uniforms of the umpires of Major League Baseball, and he should totally collapse and nothing should happen to him. Why does this keep happening to us, Ben?
Yeah, it's that schemorphic design problem. We have this beautiful new tool which can prevent these things from happening, but then we have this legacy traditional finance mindset where we build basically the same tools with this beautiful, the same institutions with this beautiful tool. So yeah, ultimately, he will fix problems. Bitcoin will fix problems like this, but not as long as we just continue to build the same things we used to build. Of course, they're just going to collapse in on themselves.
I only really trust the money when it's held by a bank. And you think about that meme, I don't have it up right now, where it has the guy with a little stand and it's like Bitcoin 60,000 and there's a giant line. Bitcoin, what are we at? 17,000. Nobody there at all. It just keeps happening over and over again. Let's move on to the next issue. Issue 5. El Salvador plans to buy more Bitcoin every day despite losing millions already. You know, I've been critical of this guy in the past, but I'm kind of starting to like him. Nayib Bukele has pledged to buy 1 Bitcoin a day. I don't know when he's going to stop, but he says he's going to keep doing it. And even this magazine right here, this is says Microsoft, it's Gizmodo. They claim, and again, this is from the magazine, it says that it's a shockingly dumb decision based upon the massive loss he's already taken by buying Bitcoin at an all-time high. Whereas I think the Bitcoiner mindset sees this more as dollar cost averaging for El Salvador, a chance to get some cheap coins. Ben Ark, you're in El Salvador. What do you think about the decision to buy more Bitcoin?
I think it's win-win. This is the thing. So if you look at the amount of money they've lost in holding Bitcoin as a national asset, it's the GDP was up 10% last year. So from like 2 or 3% the year before. So the very fact that they've embraced Bitcoin, the Bitcoin industry, has brought a lot of industry into a very small country, which doesn't have a huge GDP, and it's actually made a noticeable change and difference. So when I came last year, it was different. It wasn't like it is now. It feels safer. People seem happier. There's this beautiful new airport when you fly in. The airport I came to last time was what you would expect from like a fairly small Central South American country, but now they've got this wonderful new airport with this great roof design which simulates a wave. But Kelly's he's pushed two things. He's pushed the surf city and pulling in surfers and their tourism money. And then he's also pushed the Bitcoin industry, and lots of businesses have set up here. So it doesn't really matter that they make losses on their Bitcoin because they've made such huge gains on the industrial impact, which is quite interesting. And we are probably towards the bottom of the bear market. So he could just redirect the money they've made on the increasing GDP. He could just redirect that into buying some Bitcoin, which maybe they're doing, and they're going to break even. But then, of course, the price will eventually go up, as it always does with Bitcoin. And they'll be in a very good position indeed. I have noticed that it's somewhat the elephant in the room when it comes to payments. And this has been something which is kind of, it's already been sad. Like, I thought about it deeply and I was like, well, it's actually a good thing that when they adopted Bitcoin, since then, we've had this bear market, and they've had their first bear market. And also for the Bitcoin industry, if we're using Lightning Network as a medium of exchange, which that's what it's used for, then you can't have price volatility. It makes terrible money for people on subsistence wages. So there's lots of people focusing on how do you solve that problem. You have these wrapped assets, like the Bitcoin Beach wallet, where you can have like $1. You can have things priced in dollars, but it sits behind it, and then there's like stuff in the background to make sure that peg stays. And I think there's going to be some really interesting work next year when I come here. I want to see an El Salvadorian dollar which is stable, and there's some federated thing where it's like half geographical political regions of the country, and then maybe half industrial sectors, and then maybe the El Salvador dollar is like pegged to USD, GBP, or euro, and maybe some gross domestic products such as coffee, or producers, or I don't know, whatever gross domestic products that El Salvador has. But yeah, it's quite an exciting place to be, even though they've clearly lost a lot of money by having Bitcoin as an asset. Their GDP has gone up, and just attracting all that industry has been very, very good for the country, noticeably good for the country.
Ben, how's the attendance at the conference? And would you say it's mainly locals or mainly Bitcoiners from out of town?
Now, that's a very good point, Thomas. So last year when I came, it was just all gringos. And like, I brought all these electronics here, and I wanted to like make points of sale and then get them out into the local community so people could, have like payment devices. And I basically just brought all these electronics on a plane from Europe. People made them in my workshops, and they took them all back to Europe. So there wasn't many locals involved. This year, there was a fair amount of locals, lots of Latin American, lots of Brazilians, and people from Guatemala and other regions nearby Mexico. So that was really exciting. That there's, and I think this has been a side effect of Latin America having a country which has embraced Bitcoin. It means that the little cantons of Bitcoiners, where they want to do something with Bitcoin, they've been inspired and empowered, and they've realized that they can affect change. So you have two great projects in Guatemala where they set up a similar thing to the El Zonte Bitcoin economies, and then also in Bitcoin Brazil, Praia Bitcoin Brazil. It's absolutely beautiful what they've done there. They've brought in some Bitcoin donations, and then they've used those donations to help the infrastructure of the town. They've like built the school of computer suite, and you've got a rural neighborhood where everyone's unbanked, and now they all have payment cards, and they're able to make digital payments in the shops, and it's really quite inspiring. I went to an incredible talk by Bitcoin Brazil, so please do everybody check that out. But yeah, it's inspired a lot of good work around El Salvador. Maybe not in, I mean, there's good work in El Salvador, but there's also in the other countries of Central and South America, and there were definitely more attendees who were gringos.
And what about Bitcoin Beach? Are they still buying burgers with Lightning Network?
I mean, the price has just gone down, so no one wants to use it as money, and it's fair because I was speaking to a guy who owns a beautiful bar looking over the little surf bay yesterday, and he was just saying that if he has any money left over, then he uses it for investment in his bar and add some extra tables, chairs, those sorts of things, and this is kind of the interesting thing. So he's not using Bitcoin, but the Bitcoin law, and then also the push for Surf City has attracted a lot of tourism. So he's reinvesting that money into building out his own operation. But when it comes to actual payments with Bitcoin, it's kind of gimmicky. It's just as we have it in Europe or US, like they're accepting payments in the bar when all the Bitcoiners were there, but you can imagine they probably wouldn't afterwards. But there's I was hanging out with another Bitcoin because I didn't go there last year, who went to the El Zonte, and he said that there was a huge change. There'd been a huge change. And all these lovely cafes, restaurants, hotels, bars. It was a nice place to go, and the surf was great, and there was a really good vibe. So long may it continue. And then I said to the guy who ran this bar hotel thing, I said, I told him about the idea of the El Salvador dollar, and he said, yeah, if that existed, then of course I don't want to use the USD. And I said, well, let's hope next year when I come back here, I can pay with a stable medium of exchange in your wallet. If you want, you can swap to the investment asset, the store of value Bitcoin over time, or if you want, you can accept the stable coin and it still has some local connection. And he was like, yeah, cool, like bring it on, that's what we want. So we have to listen to the people who we're actually trying to build these tools for. So hopefully that'll happen next year.
And Victoria, what do you think about the El Salvador decision to double down and buy more Bitcoin?
Yeah, well, I think it's really interesting hearing Ben's story from on the ground, because of course that's the one aspect that was not mentioned in that article at all. I mean, the mainstream media clearly wants to create an impression that this guy is just a lunatic, because the thing is, if you read the article as it's written, the fact that he's already lost millions of dollars on this investment and is going to buy more of it. I mean, those on the face of it who don't understand how Bitcoin works and how the price cycles work, I mean, it's just like, it makes him look like a lunatic, at the very least reckless. But of course, there's more to the story than that. It's not just about the fact that it's, the price is what it is. It's about the fact that, this is a technology that has captured the imagination of thousands of people, and it's brought investment to a country that was really struggling up until this initiative. In terms of him buying now, I mean, I'm not sure that was such a good idea. I mean, I have seen some videos where people were maintaining the bottom was in before we had this crash in the price. I think all things considered, we could see a low that's completely anticipated because of all the macroeconomic factors going on. So from that perspective, I don't think it's a very good strategy. But, as Ben has pointed out, there's way more to this particular story than that.
We're running out of time. We're moving on to issue 6. Issue 6, national security secrets raised in case against crypto couple charged in billion-dollar heist. The case is the Bitfinex hack. It's the couple that was caught because they purchased Walmart gift cards that were then allegedly linked to $3.6 billion in Bitcoin. A court filing made by U.S. prosecutors on Wednesday in the case and his eccentric rapper wife says that the investigation now involves classified national security information and documents. They did hold Liechtenstein citizenship and Russian citizenship and traveled extensively in Ukraine, perhaps a Russian connection to this massive hack that was obviously not done by the rapper and the Walmart gift card seeking PlayStation 5 fans who were arrested for it. Let's go to Josh Shigal, who's with us now. Josh, what do you think about the Bitfinex hack? And suddenly it involves national security.
Yeah, it's wild that it's actually, this is one of the things. If there's a hack, it doesn't matter how long you wait, it's on the chain. It's going to get tracked and traced. So that's a problem for these hackers, which is, it's great to see actual criminals being taken down instead of just this stuff. But again, I'm not a big fan of following the money. I think money should be private. I'm a big fan of following actual criminal activity and trying to bust people other ways. But yeah, I mean, let's see if any of the, what I think we said it last week, if any of that money ends up in the hands of people that actually lost their money, it'll be great. But I get a feeling it won't. And if it doesn't, then it should be put into like education, into what scams and hacks look like or what to look out for. Probably won't happen either. And if that's not the case, Smithsonian museums probably won't even happen.
It is nice. In this case, you can tell the criminals from the people on the front of Fortune magazine. And you can also say to yourself, these people don't seem like the real hackers. So there's definitely more to this story. Victoria, what do you think about the Bitfinex hackers? As Josh said, we hope people get money back, but remember Bitfinex did that clever accounting thing with the coins as well. So it might just go back to Bitfinex.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. I hadn't thought of that. The fact that Bitfinex managed to keep itself going as a going concern. So presumably, if they did get the funds back, that would be even better news for the people who got their token. Simon Dixon can take even more credit for having organized that. So yeah, but yeah, I mean, I've never seen such a dodgy couple in my life. I mean, it's hard to believe that, you know, they would be the smart ones to hack into, but who knows, you know, people, you know, appearances can be deceptive. But yeah, when I was looking through the article, and I was looking at how the government had captured some of the money, but they still had a lot of money in other accounts that the government hadn't accessed. And the note I made was "Mo money, mo problems." You know, it's just like the more money you have, the more problems it can actually give you in certain circumstances. You know, keeping track of all of that and hiding it, and the convoluted paths they've got to go through. I mean, good grief, you know, I mean, give me a peaceful life, enough to live on. I don't need billions. Figuring out ways to hide it. So, you know, all credit to them. They've certainly taken on the challenge. Be interesting to see how it ends up.
And all these people wanted were some PlayStation 5s from Walmart. I'm perfectly satisfied with the PlayStation 4. It seems good. Ben Ark, what do you think about the alleged Bitfinex hackers suddenly now a national security concern?
I mean, I don't think they are. I think they probably were the ones who did the hack. Like, if you look into I looked into some of the videos they produced previously before going to Crypto Central, whatever. Like, and they were trying to run some sort of email Ponzi scam. You can find this on the. I mean, perhaps those YouTube videos aren't there now still, but I'm sure that they're findable if you search for it. But you know, they were trying to make a quick buck. They're script kiddies. They know how to use a computer. You could download software which does a whole bunch of very complex hacking things, and they did that. They found a vulnerability. They're able to exploit it. I think quite often you would overestimate the technical competence of somebody who can pull off a big hack. Sometimes it's just luck of the draw. There's lots of people trying to find the vulnerability. They were the ones who did it. They're creepy and weird, but they're in love, and I don't know, I can't help feeling they're kind of endearing in a way, as much as it sucks for everybody. But I don't think there's some great conspiracy. It's fairly usual for people to have, like, not usual, but it's not unusual for people to have dual citizenship, and it's not, you know, causation is not possible word. But yeah, so I don't think that's a big conspiracy. I think it's just a creepy couple in love who kept trying to hack things, and eventually they won and they got a big score. And then they made some very stupid decisions in concealing the funds.
Correlation does not equal causation. And I think this was also the case where they were protected by BitGo, and every withdrawal would be checked by the BitGo multiple, what's it called? A multiple signature situation. They had multi-sig technology. You were very safe. But then it turned out that it was too difficult to check every signature, so they'd set it to kind of auto check, so you could just withdraw whatever you want. And they figured this out. And I think it was Peter Todd at the time who said the famous quote, "BitGo fuck yourself." Yes, BitGo fuck yourself. So we'll see how it goes. I don't know about the national security thing. I still don't know if they're the real hackers, and the national security thing for me leads right into that, because obviously the real hackers might be foreign agents. But we're running out of time. Josh Agala just showed up. Josh, what do you think about week 2 at FTX? We found out that they're making accounting decisions by chat rooms that were regularly erased. They're investing hundreds of $1,000s by emoji. So smiley face equals yes, frowny face equals no money for you. And the guy's just shopping at supermarkets in the Bahamas, and the newspapers are profiling him like he did nothing wrong. What do you think about FTX week 2?
Yeah, it's there's so much laundry coming out now, and so many strange articles. You know, people are going into their sex lives and that they're all poly and all this stuff, but really all of that doesn't matter. All of that doesn't matter. What matters is that these were criminals, and actually one thing I do want to say is that Sequoia is largely at fault here. I'm going to just call them out on this. Sequoia have a massive, massive role to play. When they invest, they know that people don't do due diligence once they invest. When they invest, people assume that Sequoia has put a hell of a lot of due diligence in. And then instead, then they get the next person just invest, and the next and the next. And then Fortune magazine goes, oh, look, all these people invested plus Sequoia. I'm going to put this face on the magazine. And then, oh, look, his face on the magazine. It's this snowball that happens. And it happened from the root, which was Sequoia not doing their proper job in the industry. And really, I mean, they have good enough accountants to go in there, look through the data room, and truly understand what's going on there and ask the right questions. When someone says they're worth 22 billion and you go, well, where does that come from? And they say, oh, well, I've got this FTT token. You say, okay, well, it's not very liquid. So actually you're not worth that, are you, bud? It doesn't take too many brain cells to rub together to actually ask these tough questions. Instead, you have Sequoia, which is a very, very reputable investment firm, basically dog the entire industry and now go, oh, we need more regulation. Like what he did wasn't illegal enough. What are they going to make it more illegal? What he did? No, it was already illegal what he did. Just piling on regulation for regulation's sake makes no real difference here. And this is the stuff that's starting to come out. I don't care about his sex life. I care about the fact that so many people lost their money. I know people personally that have now bankrupt because of this, you know. And so it's a real shame. It needs to change. We need to head more towards decentralization. We need to stop trusting these custodial systems. This is the whole point we got into Bitcoin. To get away from rehypothecation, to get away from printing money out of thin air. And we've just found ourselves back at there under the allure of a quick buck or under the allure of safety. And, you know, we learned this in Mt. Gox. We did. But we've had so many new people coming into the industry that they needed to touch that painful flame as well. And now they've touched it. I'm really hoping that that people start to see the power of the decentralized world of DeFi. Like, it really is a powerful, powerful thing. It's not a panacea. There will be smart contracts that have backdoors. There will be smart contracts that have upgradability functions, which can also be exploited. But this is where smart contract auditors will come in and warn people of that, and people need to know, that's what that means. So there's a whole lot of stuff that needs to happen. There's a whole lot of industry that needs to be looking at itself. All of us need to be, you know, working hard to educate new people into why custodianship is important for yourself. So self-custody, and holding your private keys is super important.
It is pretty amazing that Sequoia and so many others invested in a structure like this. No board of directors, a young kid, no experience. It's almost like they're thrill-seeking hedge funds. Like, they're out on a date and they're having a good time and they're going to go all the way. And it's like investment funds trying heroin. It's like they're just like, well, this will be really wild compared to the way we normally do it. We'll just risk everyone's money like this. It's crazy. Ben, Ark, do you have a prediction or a story of the week? I think you're running out of time here, and thanks so much for joining us from El Salvador, all the way down there.
Yeah.
No, so story of the week would be the conference was great. We also launched a shop, LMBits shop, to help fund some development. So it's shop.lmbits.com. I can't share my screen because I'm on my phone, but it's got some cool gizmos on there. We've made some gizmos specifically for it. So we have like a clock type thing, which checks the Bitcoin price, the mempool, and then you can also link it up so it like actually gives you the values in some LMBits wallets, which could be kind of useful for someone if they want to keep an eye on a wallet on their desk. We also have like an arcade machine thing we built, which is super cool. I don't know if you could share a screen there, Thomas, but I don't run out of time, so it's okay. But if you want to check out shop.lmbits.com. Yeah, the conference was great. They did a great job. Everyone enjoyed it. and it was better than last year, and I'm sure next year will be better again.
Awesome.
Very good. Thanks so much, Ben, for joining us all the way from El Salvador. Josh, we also talked about the Twitter troubles. According to Reuters, Elon has fired the engineers responsible for keeping running the platform. He's locked the doors to the building, and many engineer type people fear that the platform itself could splinter and collapse over the weekend, especially under the load of the World Cup event, which is starting. Josh, what do you think about Twitter and what Elon's been up to? Many people on this panel think he might pull it through. It does look dire right now.
I think he'll do it. He'll be all right. She'll be right. Maybe we'll get actual conversations happening again. Maybe people will go, oh, wow, there's a real world. Oh. Who knows?
So far, most of the conversations are just envisioning Twitter's funeral while we're still on Twitter. So it's been a bit of a creative writing exercise, I think. And Victoria, do you have a prediction or a story of the week? Go ahead.
Well, I mentioned the latest newsletter I was producing on my webpage last week. That's now out. Basically, I'm commenting on what I think of the macroeconomic environment and how I think that the Bitcoin bear market still has further to go. Not great news, but I think it's better to be forewarned is forearmed. So anyone's interested in that, they can check that out on satoshispage.com.
Oh, I'll be checking that out for sure.
Very good. And Josh Shigala, do you have a prediction or a story of the week?
No, I mean, we're heading in, we're 10 days away from launching finally the S Euro, which is really exciting. And if you're into yield farming, go check it out because it's a really great way. The first S Euro will be sold under €1 at 80 cents. And then as more and more volume fills up that stability pool, that discount will become less and less until it reaches a 1-to-1. And at that point, it'll become a stable coin. And while you're waiting, you can actually put that into liquidity pool and sell us that liquidity for a bond. And depending on how long that bonding maturity date is, the more yield there is. So good old fun yield farming at its best. Not financial advice. Do your own thing. Totally, check it out. Do your own due diligence. Check out the contracts. Check out the audits on the contracts. And yeah, if you're not into that sort of thing, but you want to help out, build the ultimate stablecoin protocol, decentralized stablecoin protocol. Check out the Discord and the Telegram because we're all talking philosophy there. We're talking concepts, technology, all sorts of stuff, memes.
Very cool. And check it out at thestandard.io. And everyone be sure to check out World Crypto Network this week. We did a couple of live Twitter spaces. If you'd like to join the space, just keep a watch of @MadBitcoins on Twitter. We also have recorded versions of the spaces here on the World Crypto Network and coming out on the podcast soon over the weekend. So mainly we talked about FTX, some of the ethical dilemmas that SBF has faced, and just a general shock of everyone to see the entire industry suddenly in flame. But we're running out of time. Thanks to the people in the chat for keeping us honest on the time, Proper Gall and others who are here early, counting it down. And until next time,
Bye.